The box office results are in, and Barbie's taking the lead over Oppenheimer in the early previews, but that was kind of be expected. And here's the article talking about it. Barbie makes 22.3 million in previews, whereas Oppenheimer has 10.5 million. It's actually not bad for both those movies considering their budgets. Oppenheimer's budget is around 100 million, so that means it needs to make around 250 million to be considered a success. Whereas Barbie's a little bit more expensive at 145 million, which means it needs to make probably around 350 to break even. So both those movies are off to a pretty good start. The biggest box office battle in years has begun with Warner Brothers Barbie making 22.3 million at the domestic box office in Thursday's previews. Universal's Oppenheimer made 10.5 million in previews. All right, so this was never really a box office battle. I mean, I know that's kind of the way they're phrasing that in the media, but I mean, Barbie was always going to take the lead in this opening weekend. A lot of the factors that come into play here is just the fact that it's a PG-13 movie as opposed to Oppenheimer being R, which means more people can just buy tickets to it without having to show IDs and other things like that. And also, it's more of an accessible type story for people versus Oppenheimer. That's kind of a pseudo documentary style movie. I'm actually surprised that they're releasing it in the summer. I mean, that feels more like a movie that they would release in the fall or winter time frame, but whatever. I mean, they're releasing it in the summer, and then also just the run times. I mean, Oppenheimer is a 3-hour movie. That means theaters can't really have as many showings of a movie when it's 3 hours long, and a lot of people don't like sitting for long movies like that, especially nowadays when people are used to watching things on streaming. So they might figure like, oh, this is something that we can sit out. But that's not to say I don't think Oppenheimer will be successful. I mean, far from it. I actually think it will be a pretty successful movie. I mean, especially if this early box office is anything to be believed. So right now it's saying Barbie is expected to have a huge debut, well over 100 million in its opening weekend, with some estimates as high as 140. Now, this is just domestic, keep in mind, but I think 140 is pushing it. 100 million, I think that's more than feasible, but yeah, 140 seems like, that's ambitious, but sure, it's going to be in that range too, I guess. Whereas Oppenheimer is expected to open with 50 million domestically, so yeah, still pretty good, a worthy second place. I agree, and it's comparing it to other movies, early previews. Dunkirk 5.5 million, and then John Wick 4, Fast X, Dial of Destiny, but that's also a bomb though. Same with Fast X. So it's hard to say, but yeah, this final box office for this weekend will probably be Barbie number 1, Oppenheimer 2, followed by Mission Impossible, then Sound of Freedom, which is actually just kind of, it's like a one of these things. It's not like the other, with Sound of Freedom being like the little indie movie that's still hanging with the big boys now, especially considering it's also it would be above Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny and things like that. So good on that one for being able to stick with the big boys on this one. A lot of the factors though about how successful these movies will play out does revolve around the audience, and right now early audience score for Barbie is pretty good. It's really good for Oppenheimer, but you got to keep in mind these early audience scores tend to skew more positively because people who come out to see these movies on the opening weekend generally have more of a favorable view to it. They're excited about seeing it, so they're going to go see it. So we'll see how that shifts as time goes on, because what you see happen is people who are excited to see it go see it opening weekend and be like, oh, it's great, and tell their friends like, this is an amazing movie, you got to go see it. Okay, I'll check it out, I wasn't sure. Then they go see it, then they're like, wait, that sucked, I didn't like it or whatever. So and then the score starts slipping or whatever. I mean, that's usually how it works. Even if it's not bad, if it's even if it's good, I mean, the scores will still kind of slip because there's usually people who are going to see it every subsequent week is less excited about it, if that makes any sense. But anyway, there has been talk about this movie right now with Barbie saying like, oh, well, there's like, it's kind of misandristic and stuff like that. So we'll see if that actually affects it. Or even then, like next weekend, we could see a drop off because this was a front loaded project where people usually just run out to see it the opening weekend, and then that's it. Whereas Oppenheimer does feel like one of those movies that people don't necessarily want to run out to see the opening weekend, but they can see it over time. So I'm just curious what these two movies drop-offs will be next weekend. But like I said, right now, Barbie's going to take the number 1 spot, and we'll just see if it retains the number 1 spot next week. Let me know what you think in the comments. Do you think Barbie will retain the number 1 spot? Will Oppenheimer beat it next weekend? Or will something else happen? Will Dial of Destiny rally or whatever to take the number one spot or something. Who knows? But let me know what you think in the comments. And if you like this video, click that like button, share the video, and subscribe to the channel if you want to stay up to date with this latest news. Thank you.